everybody, and welcome to Epic Everyday, our daily podcast for busy Christians where we work on transforming each moment from the inside out, moving from franticity to freedom and enoughness, no matter what your circumstances are.
Great word.
Thanks. I'm Liz Ferris, and this is my husband, Evan.
Greetings. Happy Tuesday.
Yes, we are so glad that you guys are with us today. As we mentioned yesterday, we are working our way through an entire week of surrender. Our show is based off of the CSCs, which are an adaptation of Peter Ralston's Tai Chi principles, and they are being calm, surrendered.
I can say them.
Okay, fine.
Being calm, surrendered, centered, connected, and complete.
Good job.
And I wouldn't have had to have read them, but I did.
So today we are going to talk about surrender and how the results are not controllable when you're surrendered.
By the very nature of it, yes.
Yes, it means that Lord knows what could happen.
So why is it scary? Do you want to go first?
Well, so to me anyway, I'm just slightly a bit of a control freak. Just a little bit. Shh, don't say anything.
Okay.
I see you looking at me. So when I'm like, hey, here's my plan, and then I kind of am like, we're doing the plan, and then for the Lord, well, for anything to happen where suddenly the plan is not happening, it's kind of scary. And one of the things that I wrote down was, what if God sends you to be a missionary in deepest, darkest Africa, or has you doing mindless paperwork?
Ooh.
Those were my two top fears in college, like in high school, when I was like, Lord, what do you want me to do with my life? I want to be open to whatever. And I was like, just don't send me to be a missionary in deepest, darkest Africa, and don't have me doing mindless paperwork the rest of my life.
Well, so you held on to those.
Well, I ended up surrendering them
Yeah,
eventually,
right.
but those were my top fears about surrendering to the Lord, that he would either put me so far out of my comfort zone that I'd get eaten alive by snakes and spiders, or that I would end up being so far not out of my comfort zone that I would die of boredom.
Yeah.
My brain would shrivel up.
I think that's a good prayer. I mean, it's expressing that, like you said, the desire to actually do something
Yeah.
fulfilling, and your desire to trust God. Just not quite sure if you're ready to trust him with
Right.
being a missionary to snake spiders.
Exactly.
I think for me, it's, like we said, letting go of the results. I guess trusting that the answer to the prayer, or to, giving my life to God, will be his choosing and in his time. And sometimes I get tired of waiting. I kind of talked about it yesterday, but when I think I'm surrendering, I'm like, okay, I'm going to surrender my situation and I'm going to pray about it. But the thing I'm praying for is the result I want.
Right.
And I think that's a good prayer, but it needs to be held with an open hand. And I struggle with that. Okay, God, I'd really like, I don't know if it's a church thing, this person to become a Christian, and then for our church to grow, and for everybody in St. Louis to become a Christian, and but then the surrender part is, okay, I prayed the prayer, and God he may answer it slowly.
Well, and I think, recognizing I'm so afraid sometimes of holding things with an open hand because I don't want the Lord to suddenly decide he's sending me to Africa.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, I have no more control over my life if I have an open hand or white-knuckled fist. Either way, lots of things are going to happen that are outside of my control.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, one thing that we're trying to do and through surrender and faith right now is putting this show out there.
Yeah.
Don't know what's going to happen and if anybody's going to listen to it, but we're enjoying doing it, which is a plus.
Yes.
It's not
if we hated it,
big,
that would not be fun.
it's a little bit of a time burden, but it's not like this heavy burden thing. It's fun.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, well, okay. And then, who knows? See what happens. And
Yeah.
it's exciting, but it's also like scary too, I guess.
Yeah.
'Cause like you were saying with your original prayer, like we want to be doing something fulfilling and something that's good and contributes to the world and society and
Yes.
Christian culture or whatever.
Something that's epic.
Yes, every day. But we've got to let go of the results and just do the thing that we feel called to do.
Right.
That's a tricky part of surrender.
Yeah. And I think it comes back to who God is. And if you have a firm grasp on who He really is, you can surrender. If you know that He's always working things out for the good of those who love Him, like He says in Romans 8:28. If you know that He designed you for a specific purpose, like He says, I think it's in Philippians 2, where God talks about how He's prepared good works for us in advance. So He's not going to ask you to do something you're going to hate.
Yeah, right. They go hand in hand. He's made you and put good works in front of you to do.
Right.
I
Yeah. He
mean,
knows who we are. He knows we're made of dust. He has compassion on us, like it says in the Psalms, that he is fully aware of our flaws and our strengths, and he uses those things. Like the things that he's called you to do are awesome and
yeah.
life-giving and energizing, and yes, they are sometimes stressful and sometimes it is hard, but long term, they're awesome. So,
And they fit you perfectly. I think that's such a faith building thing for me is like God's intentionally making. I mean, we see this having children really opened my eyes to this. Just I don't know. I've some people, even some parents, have been like, "Oh, my kid's finally what? Pick an age. Oh, he's starting to have a personality." But our kids, from day one, it was like, "This is a unique individual. This
right,
there's certain quirks here and personality traits from day one, and that's God's hand." And then that person with those character traits and those natural abilities, and then you're gonna have to hone your natural abilities and learn new skills to
right,
do the thing that God wants you to do to fit into the world where He wants you to fit. Like a Lego. There,
yeah.
there's a million different kinds of Legos because you need all that stuff to build. The Millennium Falcon or whatever.
I think you mean the Enterprise.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the other thing too that I've been thinking about with where you end up, one of my favorite books that talks about this is The Belgariad
Bye.
by David Eddings.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually read it every so often just to remind myself that God's plan is not, that it's actually a shortcut, even though it doesn't feel like it.
Yeah, it's a good one.
So I'm going to read this little passage out of it.
We need a little jingle for story time.
Yeah.
I'll work on that if we keep having story time, which
Yes.
I think we would. Anyway.
So anyway, the main character, his son has been stolen by the bad guy, and they're racing across the continent trying to catch this person. And originally they went the wrong direction, so there was like a super long detour and yada yada. And one of the main things they've been doing is running around finding these prophecies that were made thousands of years ago so that they can figure out what they're supposed to be doing now. Garion suddenly banged his fist on the rail in frustration. Supposed to? He burst out. I don't care about what we're supposed to do. I want my son back. I'm tired of creeping around trying to satisfy all the clever little twists and turns of the prophecy. What's wrong with just ignoring it and going straight to the point? Belgarath, who's his great-great-great-grandfather. Belgarath's face was calm as he looked out at the rust-colored cliffs, half hidden in the gray drizzle. I've tried that a few times myself, he admitted, but it never worked, and usually it put me even further behind. I know you're impatient, Garion, and sometimes it's hard to accept the idea that following the prophecy really is the fastest way to get where you want to go. But that's the way it always seems to work out. Let's look at things from a practical point of view, though. When we started out, we were half a year behind Xandromus, who's the bad person, who stole the Garion's son. And we were planning a very tedious and time-consuming trek across Cithal Murgos, but we kept getting interrupted. Tell me about it, Silk said sardonically. Isn't it curious that after all these interruptions, we've reached the eastern side of the continent ahead of schedule and cut Xandromus's lead down to a few weeks? Silk blinked, and then his eyes narrowed. Gives you something to think about, doesn't it?
I think a perfect example of that is the story of Joseph in the Bible too.
Yeah.
I mean, getting sold into slavery, left for dead by your siblings, in different order, but yeah, nearly murdered, sold into slavery, and then that is the means by which God saves the Israelis from drought and famine.
Right. Yeah, it looks like
The first
there's
generation of Israelis.
there's like a detour, and you're like, I just want to get from A to B. This is taking so long. And then all of a sudden, the Lord is just like, here you go. I mean, we've seen that in our own lives. I've talked before about how getting whooping cough a few years ago, I was like bedridden for 9 months. But because of that, I was able to get out of a wheelchair.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I mean, the Lord used that to heal my system in a lot of ways and to teach me a lot about, what I was doing with my sleep and my nutrition and even my stress level. Like being able to work through some of those things and really see, oh man, I am shooting myself in the foot repeatedly. So, yeah, sometimes the things that God puts us through don't feel like the best way to do things.
Yeah,
but then,
go ahead.
What were you going to say?
Was there more you were going to say about the Bulgarian story?
That was
Besides just read it? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's just so great because they're running around, like the prophecy says that they need to do this one thing and then this other thing. And Garen is like, who cares? Let's just go find Xandromus. And Bulgaria is like, no, we're going to do this one thing and then this other thing. And we're going to fulfill the conditions of the prophecy because it's actually the fastest way, even though it does not feel like the fastest way.
Yep. The evidence is right there before them. They caught up to the bad guy.
Right, they're half a year behind when they start, and then they're just a couple weeks behind after all their little detours that they have to take.
Another thing I thought of with letting go of the results that's tricky is when you ask someone for help and they say yes, sometimes the help you're asking for and the yes that they give are a little mismatched. Like they're giving you the help they're willing to give you.
Right.
And that we need to accept that. And if it's not enough help, go ask somebody else for help.
Or clarify.
Sure.
Because we definitely have experienced that where we've been like, oh, we need help with, for instance, like, oh, we need help with childcare, and people are like, we'll give you meals.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. And so being able to say, no, really what I meant by was childcare,
Yeah. And that's another thing that's different, dealing with other human beings and then dealing with God. When God's like, oh, well, here, I'll give you a lemon. That's what you need, even though it may not make sense. But yeah, with the person, it helps to communicate more. But I mean, we're surrendering when we ask for help, and it's a good thing to ask for help. Sometimes we're real good at giving. And Christians struggle with receiving sometimes. Like we'll be like, oh, we're going to give money to the poor or to a family that needs, a new refrigerator or something. And then when we need a new refrigerator, and if the church were like, here's $2,000, go for it. And you'd be like, you're so uncomfortable. But we need to be good at both. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about mistakes allowed, which is a huge mantra I think we'll probably talk about a lot. But with surrender, we really need it because it has to do with what we talked about today, letting go of the results. But we need to be allowed to make mistakes. That's a huge part of life. And it's icky. Nobody likes it.
It is, Thank you guys so much for all the people that have been sharing it and for you guys that are listening. We pray for you guys all the time that you would grow in your abundance and freedom, that God would just help you to use the CSCs to really find that margin. And if you haven't shared it, if you are enjoying our podcast, please do share it with 2 or 3 people if you know somebody that it would help out. Because the more people that are living in freedom and abundance and aligning with God's reality, the better we're all going to be. I mean, the church is a body. We need to help each other out.
Yeah, we'll be more effective doing those good works that God set before us when we are in surrender and calm and all the other CSCs.
Definitely. So thank you so much for coming today. We hope that you guys have an awesome Tuesday and that you can spend a little bit of time today just growing in that, letting go of the results, letting go of maybe this is a detour, but being able to say, okay, Lord, your detours are the shortcuts.
Yeah, practice that.
Exactly. All right, we will see you guys tomorrow.